Welcome to Growth and Value course for NGO leaders. In this first submodule of the course, you will get insights on how to develop your organization's strategy. We will begin with defining the term NGO as a point of reference for this course. We will then take a bird's-eye view of organizational strategies for NGOs and reflect upon why organizational strategies are important for NGOs. We will then look deeper at the components to consider when developing an organizational strategy, including defining core values, formulating vision statements and mission statements, and identifying goals and actions. We will explore how the process of developing an organizational strategy can be facilitated, and we will consider the non-static nature of organizational strategies and the importance of monitoring. The central learnings for this submodule are as follows. 1. Non-governmental organization, NGO, is a very broad term, which can incorporate many different organizational structures and can take many different forms within the so-called third sector. 2. Developing and maintaining an organizational strategy for your NGO will help you set priorities and direct your actions to strengthen the impact of your efforts. 3. There are several different elements that make up an organizational strategy: vision, mission, goals, and actions to achieve them, and core values that bind all of these together. 4. There is no one singular way in which you should develop an organizational strategy, but make sure to put aside dedicated time for it and try and make it an enjoyable process for everyone involved. 5. Lastly, remember that your developed strategy is dynamic and will most likely not stay the same. So don't be afraid to revisit it. Be critical and change it if necessary. As this submodule covers the subject of developing an organizational strategy for your NGO, let's firstly examine what an NGO is. NGO, or non-governmental organization, is a very broad term, which can incorporate many different organizational structures and legal frameworks and can have different levels of recognition in different parts of the world. Collectively, NGOs are forming what is commonly referred to as being the third sector, the other two sectors being the public or governmental sector and the private or commercial sector. Today, NGOs can take many different forms and can be referred to in many different ways, such as SBOs or social benefit organizations, TSOs or third sector organizations, CSOs or civil society organizations, SCOs, or social change organizations, NPOs, or non-profit organizations. The course has chosen to use the term NGO to form a common basis that is broad enough to avoid contradicting transnational variations in the legal structure of organizations, while still providing a clear point of reference. In this regard, when using the term NGO, the course is referring to organizations that generally have a set of broadly defining characteristics. The characteristics used by the course for a point of reference in defining NGOs are based upon the European discussion paper, The Commission and Non-Governmental Organizations, Building a Stronger Relationship, and are as follows. NGOs are not created to generate personal profit. Although they may have paid employees and engaged in revenue-generating activities, they do not distribute profits or surpluses to members or management. NGOs are not self-serving in aims and related values. Their aim is to act in the public arena at large, on concerns and issues related to people's well-being, specific groups of people, or society as a whole. They are not pursuing the commercial or professional interests of their members. NGOs are voluntary. This means that they are formed voluntarily and that there is usually an element of voluntary participation in the organization. NGOs are distinguished from informal or ad hoc groups by having some degree of formal or institutional existence. Usually, NGOs have formal statutes or other governing document setting out their mission, objectives, and scope. They are accountable to their members and donors. NGOs are independent, in particular of government and other public authorities, and of political parties or commercial organizations. As we mentioned in the previous slide, NGO is a broad term, and there is no singular definition that can paint a picture of all scenarios. But if we take a point of reference in these common characteristics defined by the European Commission, it is evident that your NGO will most likely have a certain level of organizational existence. Your organization is set up to achieve something, and you have most likely considered how to go about achieving it. Through developing and maintaining an organizational strategy, you can build upon the visions and ideas you have for your NGO and solidify them into the existence of the organization. So, let's jump into it. As with any strategy, an organizational strategy is a long-term plan for fulfilling a mission or a goal. In this case, a plan for fulfilling your NGO's mission and goals. In order to set goals to fulfill your mission, you also need to understand the origins of the mission and the vision that lies behind it. And you need to ensure that the goals you set are actionable. Furthermore, you should consider how the strategy is influenced by your organization's core values. Whether you have already set up and started running your NGO or setting up an NGO is something you would like to do, you have most likely already considered why the NGO should exist and how it can go about achieving its purpose. In this case, you are already halfway there, but putting it into words can be challenging, and words such as vision and mission can become unclear and confusing. We are going to look at some practical examples of vision and mission statements later in this module. But firstly, let's have a look at how a well-considered organizational strategy can help you and your NGO beyond it being the foundation of the organization's formal existence. Your organizational strategy can help you to set priorities and direct your actions to strengthen the impact of your efforts. It can often be difficult as an NGO leader to keep a focus on one singular path. There are many different causes which you and your NGO might see as important and in need of addressing, but trying to address all causes that arrive along the way may divert attention from your original purpose. In a similar way, your organizational strategy will help you simplify and clarify your decision-making as an NGO leader. The strategy will be a guiding tool or framework against which you can assess the decisions you make. The organizational strategy is key in ensuring your organization communicates its core message clearly and consistently. The success of many of your organization's activities will depend upon whether others have a clear picture of who you are and what you're trying to do. Having a clear message will help you ensure that everyone connected to the organization is on the same page. Everyone from members to paid staff, volunteers and partners can have a common understanding of why the organization exists and what its actions are trying to achieve. As we can see, an organizational strategy is not just a document that is needed for your NGO to have a formal existence. It is the fundamental and dynamic core of your organization. There is no shortcut to develop your organizational strategy, and it can risk becoming a frustrating process. But since you are participating in this course, then most likely you are already halfway there. For now, let's start by looking at core values. Core values can be seen as the fundamental beliefs of your organization. They define who you are and what you stand for. When identifying and defining your core values, try to reflect upon the principal conditions and common attributes upon which you and your colleagues base your work together. What brought you together, and why are you a part of the organization? Try to express it in simple statements. For example, embracing cultural diversity in all forms, safeguarding freedom of opinion and thought, communicating facts, not fiction. These are just examples. Try and identify the core essence of your organization. Take time to find consensus among your peers and find the right words. Taking the time and effort to define your core values can support you in defining your NGO's vision statement. Your organization's vision is a future picture or scenario that is desired and shared amongst all within the organization. The goal of your NGO in the long run. It may describe the change or impact you intend to create within the desired future picture. It is quite likely that your organization's vision encompasses elements of your organization's core values. An NGO's vision is usually defined and documented as a vision statement. As a guide for drafting the vision statement, you can consider to use simple language that can be understood by people of all backgrounds. To make it appealing, the vision statement should inspire people to engage with your NGO and activities. Write in the present tense and make it easy to remember. Let's look at some examples. Here are some vision statement examples from 3 recognizable NGOs. IUCN. Our vision is a just world that values and conserves nature. Oxfam. A world without poverty. Feed the Children. Create a world where no child goes to bed hungry. These NGOs are well established and likely to have access to considerably more resources than your NGO, at least in the beginning. But your vision need not be any less ambitious and is certainly not any less applicable. But a vision alone is not enough to make a change. It's important to consider the purpose of your organization in achieving the vision. In other words, your organization's mission. A mission statement describes the process of how an organization will address its vision. It explains the purpose of the organization. As a guideline for drafting a mission statement, you can consider to keep it simple and concise. Define the problem that your organization wants to solve. Define the solution to the problem. And suggest the outcome, the long-term changes that your organization would bring. Here are the mission statements of the NGOs exemplified before. IUCN. Influence, encourage, and assist societies throughout the world to conserve the integrity and diversity of nature, and to ensure that any use of natural resources is equitable and ecologically sustainable. Oxfam. Our purpose is to help create lasting solutions to the injustice of poverty. We are a part of a global movement for change, empowering people to create a future that is secure, just, and free from poverty. And we are building this positive future now. Feed the Children. Providing hope and resources for those without life's essentials. It can sometimes be confusing to clearly draw a line between vision and mission when developing an organizational strategy. So let's use a little time to summarize. The vision statement describes the goal that an organization aspires to accomplish in the long run, while the mission statement describes the process of how the organization will lead to its vision. The vision statement is the summary of changes, the impact that the organization brings into the lives of the target groups it addresses, while the mission statement explains why your organization exists, its purpose, and how it addresses the purpose. The vision statement should be simple, appealing, inspiring, easy to remember, and written in the present tense. The mission statement defines the problem that your organization wants to solve, defines the broad solution to the problem, and suggests the outcome. These are just guiding principles. If you get lost, try and look at other examples from famous NGOs or local NGOs you know of. But don't get trapped into trying to reproduce the examples. Take the time to find the right words to express the sentiment of your organization and be true to your core values. Let's move on to the next element of the organizational strategy, your NGO's goals. Your organizational goals are a series of conditions your NGO is aiming to achieve. It breaks down your mission into several achievements. Goals are generally considered to differ from objectives, as goals tend to be broader and less measurable than objectives. Goals shouldn't necessarily tie your organization down to achieving narrow or specific results, but should rather give a framework to guide your organization's actions in a way that they align with your vision and mission. For the benefit of giving an example, let's refer again to Oxfam. Oxfam's strategic plan for 2013 to 2019 outlines 6 goals. 1. Help people claim their right to a better life. 2. Champion equal rights for women. 3. Save lives now and in the future. 4. Safeguard global food supplies. 5. Help people claim a fairer share of natural resources. 6. Increase money for basic services. As always with examples, this is not the one and only way. You may choose to have fewer goals or more. You may choose to divide your goals into different categories, such as local goals and international goals, or advocacy goals and operational goals. The way in which you define and frame your goals can, in turn, impact how you prioritize and plan your actions. Once you have set the goals of your NGO, you may want to consider in broad terms what actions will be used to address them. Essentially, a broad framework of activities your organization will engage in to address its goals. By broadly defining actions within your organizational strategy, you can identify and map out the opportunities and resources available to your organization for achieving its vision, including your organization's network, its human resources, and its potential access to funds. Furthermore, it can help you to prioritize your tasks and activities. As an NGO leader, it is likely that you will not be short of tasks to complete and decisions to make. Some tasks may be mandatory or essential and just need to be done, such as paying the bills or doing bookkeeping, whereas in other cases, you and your organization will choose to engage in an activity, and you may find that you have to choose between different opportunities, in which case you can refer to your organizational strategy for guidance. However, to avoid tying the organization down into a very narrow path, it can be advisable to keep the actions within your strategy broad enough to offer some flexibility in the future decision-making. To provide an example of how it could be done, we can again refer to Oxfam's strategic plan for 2013 to 2019. Under each of its 6 goals, Oxfam has identified several headline actions, which are then further elaborated. Their first goal, help people claim their right to a better life, has a headline action, Organising Civil Society, which is further elaborated to organize to persuade governments to lift restrictive laws that deny civil and political rights and to engage constructively with civil society, strengthen the capacity of civil society organizations to self-organize around the priorities of poor and marginalized people, in particular women and youth, in both rural and urban settings. Work with youth, women's, and indigenous peoples' organizations, recognizing and supporting their own ways of expression and organization. Now that we have considered all elements of an organizational strategy, you should think about how you can develop and define a strategy for your NGO to encompass the sentiment of your organization's core. There is no one singular way in which it should be done, but it is likely that you will not be finished on the first attempt. It is a process. You can consider organizing workshops to develop the ideas and build them into defined statements. The workshops could begin with a broad, blue sky thinking. Maybe try writing the ambitions of the organization on post-it notes, and then try to prioritize those ambitions. You could try exploring where you are now, and where you would like to be in 5 or 10 years. You could also explore the organization's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Try to engage individuals in the workshop that represent the organization broadly. Probably a maximum of 6 people would be optimal in most cases. If you want to engage more people, you may choose to break into smaller groups, and then one representative from each group could come together to consolidate. You should think about how the workshops will be facilitated and who will facilitate them. It is unlikely that the workshop will be as effective without a clearly defined facilitator. The facilitator can step back from the participant's perspective and see the bird's-eye picture. They can ensure every voice is heard. They can give space for flexibility and diversions of discussion whilst ensuring that the process overall is staying on track. The facilitator could be yourself, but that may prevent you from fully engaging in the process. You may also choose to use an external facilitator, someone who does not have a personal investment in the organization. You could think about where the workshops will take place. It may be effective to implement the workshop in a new or unfamiliar place. New environments often give way to new thoughts and new ideas. Regardless of where and how the workshop takes place, ensure to put aside dedicated time for it and try and make it an enjoyable process. It should be a positive experience. There are many tips and support materials online for facilitation, creative thinking, and brainstorming. You can also find some in the reading list of the module. Last but not least, it's worth noting that your strategy doesn't have to be the same forever, and it is not a sign of failure if you find that over time it becomes less relevant for your organization and needs to be changed. If you choose to change your organization's vision and mission statements every 6 months, it may of course be confusing for your members and partners. However, situations change, and over time your organization will change. It will build new experiences and gain new competencies. And whilst the core values that you have originally identified may still be there, other values that your organizations hold may become more prominent. In this case, it's important to monitor your strategy, revisit it, and do not be afraid to be critical and change it if necessary. You may find it useful to do a workshop as described in the previous slide annually and observe the results. How closely do they match from year to year? You may also set measurable criteria to monitor the progress, such as the number of projects accomplished or the number of people impacted by your actions. You may consider collecting input from both inside and outside of your organization. You could use questionnaires and surveys, interviews or focus groups. Regardless of the way in which you monitor and evaluate your strategy, be open to a change. Plans are nothing. Planning is everything. The lessons learned in this submodule are: non-governmental organization, NGO, is a very broad term, which can incorporate many different organizational structures and can take many different forms within the so-called third sector. Developing and maintaining an organizational strategy for your NGO will help you set priorities and direct your actions to strengthen the impact of your efforts. There are several different elements that make up an organizational strategy: vision, mission, goals, and actions to achieve them, and core values that bind all of these together. There is no one singular way in which you should develop an organizational strategy, but make sure to put aside dedicated time for it and try and make it an enjoyable process for everyone involved. Lastly, remember that your developed strategy is dynamic and will most likely not stay the same. So don't be afraid to revisit it, be critical, and change it